Should you carry a round chambered in your firearm while on duty as an armed security officer? Welcome to the Titan Protection Show. I am Ryan Smith here with Josh Leon, and today we are talking about working as an armed security officer and should you carry a round in the chamber in your holster while on duty. Before I get too much farther into that, I thought of this because I remember my first security gig. I got armed. I was working unarmed. I turned 21. I told the company I wanted to go armed.
Did it shock you for them to tell you to put one in the chamber?
There was nobody to tell me that.
Oh,
there was no training. Good. They said, sure. I went out, bought a firearm, qualified at Kansas City, Missouri, and then I'm armed. And I remember having this question in my head of like, do I carry a round chamber? And I'll be honest with you, I didn't for quite some time because I didn't know the answer, and it just felt unnatural to me to have a round chambered in it. It felt unsafe. So should you carry a round chambered in your firearm while on duty?
I had the polar opposite experience, the absolute opposite experience. Although I'm from a law enforcement family, my father, my grandfather, my uncles were not a big gun family. They were not hunters. There wasn't a bunch of guns around the house or anything like that. It was just something that my family carried for work. Much like if you're the son of a carpenter, that's your dad's tool belt. It's just what it was. So by the time I made it to the police academy, I had only fired a weapon a couple times. I didn't know much about guns. I wasn't some great shot or anything like that.
Right.
And so a policeman's edict, obviously, is that thing is hot. Yeah, right. you have one in the pipe at all times. So I had the exact opposite experience. And so for me,
that box was checked.
That was just checked. It was like, hell yes, there's supposed to be one in there.
So if anybody is wondering the answer to that question, the answer is yes.
It's yes.
You carry one in the chamber because obviously if you've got to get it out, it's because something's pressing and happening and you don't want to mess with chambering around.
Because of that box has been checked for 30 years for me, or 25 years or whatever it is, I went and did some Googling just to make sure that there was nothing new and I wasn't full of shit because I'm just so used to it. That's how you carry a gun.
Right.
I did like something I found.
Okay.
If you are carrying a weapon for self-defense, which is what a security officer, what a police officer, what armed officer is doing, military officer in certain situations or whatever, is what they're doing. Why in the world would you not have one in the pipe?
Right.
If you are carrying a holster, and that's how it kept being referred to that I was looking at online, a holstered weapon. If you are carrying a holstered weapon because you and I are walking out on Grandpa's ranch and we're going to go put some rounds in a target and there's no hurry and there's no urgency to it, then it's kind of...
Why carry the risk?
Why carry it in
And that's why I was specific with this of, should you, while on duty as an armed security officer, meaning working a shift? The answer would be yes. Now, I want to throw a curveball into that because if anybody's looking at this for any advice of what they should do, I would always urge you to check the laws and the restrictions in your jurisdiction.
Your city ordinances.
Because Kansas City, Missouri has one to where they expect you to keep your firearm in your trunk locked while you're to and from work. They've also hit us up where they say, if you have an officer, say a patrol officer that's bouncing around, they go into quick trip, they expect you to unholster your weapon, discharge the round, meaning, get the round out, lock it in your tray. I think that is the dumbest thing in the world. And I don't mean to be...
no, it's asinine.
You're just developing... Anytime a firearm is out of a holster, there's an opportunity for an accidental discharge.
Yeah. And what's funny is when our officers adhere to that directive, I get phone calls from police officers that say, Josh, one of your kids is sitting at Chipotle without his piece in his holster.
Right. Well, and then what does it look like to the public where you've got
that you left your gun somewhere,
or they're watching them cycle
it's a bad luck.
A bullet out and then store it away. So
the holster is the safest place for a weapon ever.
I used to, when I would go to work, I would at home get prepared, belt on, chamber round in the holster, and then I'm off and running. Now,
same.
Again, depending on the jurisdiction you're in and the laws, I would say start there and check that depending on where you're at. And certainly you could call and ask questions of the police department or whoever, but know that. And I personally think even if you are going to, so say in this scenario where you have to go to a post that's in Kansas City, Missouri, you're leaving from wherever you live or outside.
You might go through 6 cities.
Right. Well, and that's true. You may have different, but they say you need to secure your firearm in your vehicle until you're on the post that you're hired to protect. Would you advise that they should chamber around at home, put it in the holster, secure the holster belt with the gun in it in their trunk, and then put it on? Or would you say leave it out, get it on, chamber around?
I would say your first scenario.
I would agree with that too,
I think
because
it's a
you're
better
less
look.
opportunities.
I'm going to say something, and if you disagree, please jump in and tell me. And please, any Titan officer who's listening to me, there's no guarantee on this. And I'm not writing any checks on this. There's no guarantee on this. It is my opinion that 99.999% of police officers, if they pulled over an officer and saw him that he was carrying it safely in his holster, no matter what city he's in, and the officer said, I'm on my way to work or I'm on my way home from work, I think that officer is going to show them the grace. Hey, I understand. Get home safe. You actually are supposed to have that in your trunk.
I agree.
But I don't want to give a guarantee.
You don't flunk the attitude test.
You better not be a prick. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You better not be a prick because they'll catch that check.
If you're entitled about it, or
Yeah.
this is why, or it's so stupid, this and that. But yes, if you are polite and you are, doing your thing, I agree. I don't see anybody.
You can't stamp a guarantee
pressing
on
that
it.
button.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't know that many patrol officers that would know that specific statute exists with. I don't even think it'd be on their radar.
It's really not something they would concern themselves with.
Right.
Yeah. And like I said, to echo what you just said, I get more calls from police officer friends of ours that say, what's your kid doing down here without a weapon in his holster? That's what they find shocking.
Right.
Not that our officer has a secured weapon,
Right.
that our officer's walking around with an empty holster. It's a bad look.
I agree. It's a terrible idea because you're just the only time a gun can do damage is when it's out of the holster. Now, the other curveball, and luckily, and I would not advise it, I don't think we allow single action only, but I remember you used to your department carried those with the hammer back.
Yeah, that would freak people out.
I couldn't even, I mean, that just freaked me out.
It's a sexy gun, though.
It was a great, what were those?
Those CZ 1911s.
CZs.
Yeah.
And so those were single action where you rack it and then the hammer's back.
Yeah.
And then you holster it and you actually
And it
would
looks
throw
like,
the
I remember
strap
walking
under the holster.
Yeah, I remember walking into a Quick Trip. The clerk I thought was going to shit his pants because that's going to go up. I was like, no, it's not.
But in that,
there's some safeties you're not understanding. You do understand that there's the safety at the rear of the 1911 on the rear. You
so
have
where the firing pin is turned.
So it's actually behind the hammer right there. That your hand when you make the grip right there that activates one safety, and then you also have to roll up. There's more safeties than people understand.
Well, my worry would be what happens if you hit it downward with enough force that the hammer would go forward. That can't happen, and that didn't. I would obviously assume police departments would not allow that to happen if they've had some bad.
Yeah, it was fully.
But I know Kansas City, Missouri will not allow you to carry a single action only, and so that scenario, that's kind of a curveball of if you have that. Yeah. Carrying it in a holster with the
and I'm an old school guy when it comes to ADs. I'm sorry, accidental discharges and stuff like that. When somebody says, "No, I never touched the trigger," yeah,
right?
Yeah, you did.
We had one time, and it was a SWAT guy. We were leaving, and everybody was cleaning their guns after, and you have to pull the trigger on a Glock to get it to come apart.
Yep.
He thought he had it cleared.
Had one in the pipe.
Wasn't, and went
and that
through
Glock and that Glock will go off without that magazine. Oh,
yeah.
We had actual friendly fire.
Yeah, I got hit. And that two of the best guys, and two of the guys that one's a U.S. Marshal now, and other one I'm actually not sure what he's doing, but probably two. I mean, guys that I looked up to quite a bit. So it shows it can happen to anybody. But the thing I was going to make when we're talking about getting guns in and out of holsters and racking rounds and all that sort of stuff. The most important thing is use a bullet trap, know your backstop, know what you're pointing at, and assume it's going to go off. So if you're clearing a gun, if you're racking around, you got to be conscious of that muzzle discipline and where it's pointed and I was maniacal about that and still am. I don't care if my 5-year-old, And I'm not a big gun guy either.
Neither one of us are.
And it's not, it's religion to some people, but even with my kid, he's got little Nerf guns. And if he lasers me with it, I'm always like, dude, don't do it. Don't ever do that. Here's why. And if you just get into that habit, you can never, ever have a problem like that. Now, you could certainly have an accidental discharge.
Sure.
And assume you will, but just make sure that at any point, wherever that muzzle's pointing, it's going to hit a backstop, it's going to hit a bullet trap, it's going to hit something that's going to stop it, and it's not pointed at somebody.
I had a coworker of mine at one of my first security gigs that I was working. He was a motorcycle guy, and he sold his motorcycle one day, and he was really into them, and he was into the sports bikes, they're going 120 miles an hour and stuff, like 150, whatever those things go.
Right.
And I remember he said to me, I said, dude, why are you selling that? You love that thing. He goes, I'm not scared of it anymore.
Yeah.
And even after all these years, I'm not scared of I'm a firearms instructor. I teach them. I'm not scared of them. I'm highly respectful of them. And
I agree. And I still don't like, it's just the potential for what could go wrong is so high that's why I think it has to be taken care of. So, and that's why I don't like the idea of pulling guns out at, and racking rounds at getting to the post or doing it in your car.
So I was teaching Jack to drive, my youngest, to drive, and we've already passed it. He's good to go and stuff like that. And I remember we're at a 4-way stop, and he looks at the driver. I said, no, you can't just look at that guy there. You got to make eye contact with that one there. You need to put turn signal on. You need to watch for this cross traffic here. You need to watch this there. I remember he throws his hands up in the air and he goes, there's a lot of shit going on here. And I said, it's because it can kill you.
Right.
And it's the same with the firearm.
Right.
There's a lot going on.
Right.
The finger can't be in the trigger guard. The muzzle needs to be disciplined. You need to know what your target is and what's beyond it. You need to know the condition of the weapon. Is it hot? Is it not hot? You need to know. There's a lot going on. It's not meant for everybody.
You don't ever want an accidental discharge, and that's why I say my most important thing is where's the muzzle pointed and where is it at all times. If it's out of the holster, it's got to be in a safe place because all of those other things can fail. And yes, you could have a discharge, but as long as it's pointed in a place where it's not going to, hurt somebody, you can get through it.
Yeah, and these Titan guys know. We're strict, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we have done nothing but up our level of strictness.
Right. We don't allow ammunition even in our training room.
Dude, if you make a mistake in empty gun drills, we send you home.
Right.
We just
and it's got to have that culture.
Yeah, we are a culture of. I walk into class. This might make you nuts. I walk into class every week. And to Todd's class, and I'll walk in, I'll say, who are my armed guys? And they'll raise their hands, and I'll look at them, I make eye contact with them, I go, see how nice he is? I'm not. And I make it very clear because we are not going to screw around with firearms.
Right.
There's no coming back.
It's too right.
Yeah.
The
risk is too high.
The risk is too high.
Yeah.
So to wrap it up, and I mean the simple answer to that, it's a quick answer. The question is yes, if you're working on duty as an armed security officer, there should be a round chambered. You should be ready. I mean, because if you're truly in a life or death situation, you don't want to be messing around with that. You want it to be hot. You put it very well to say if you're in that scenario, whether it's military fire or military police, security, if you're in an armed capacity.
And let's talk about a civilian. You're an armed civilian that has gone through the CCW training because you have to carry a lot of cash or you carry diamonds. You're not going through a CCW class to train for hunting. You're going through a CCW class to train for an armed robbery on your person.
Right.
And so why in the world would you walk around without one in the pipe? It's depending on where your head is at. Why are you wanting to carry this gun? Well, I'm carrying it to my grandpa's ranch. Well, then no, I don't think you need one.
Now, what about at home in your nightstand? And I've heard a lot of different thoughts on this. Some people say, I got to keep it in a locked safe next to my bed. And in that scenario, I would probably keep one chambered. If somebody's saying, I keep it in my nightstand, but I've got younger kids, I know a couple officers that will leave loaded firearms in their nightstand because it's more important to them to get to it quickly. And the way to mitigate that is more education or training with the kids and saying what not to do. But I mean, when you get kids and all of that stuff.
If you want the way that I trained that piece on how you carry the gun at home, this is what I say. I know you know your kids. You know your kids' friends. You know their friends.
Right.
You know everybody that's coming and going in your house. You know your roommate.
Yeah.
You know your girlfriend's friends.
That's beyond my. And for me, you're talking about a give and take. Certainly, yes. If you're talking about keeping ammunition separate from where you're storing the firearm, if it's for easy access or something like that, for me, I would say, okay, yes, if somebody comes in the house and it's go time, it's going to take me a couple seconds to get that put together, but I would rather that than risk a kid getting a hold of it and doing something. So I'm not of the camp of do whatever you have to do to make sure it's ready to fire as quickly as possible.
If I'm a CIA operative and I am going all over the world to handle missions and rub people out, I probably have a loaded weapon right next to my bed.
Right.
I'm Josh Leon. I work for you, and I don't have that.
You're telling me you're not a CIA operative? Is this your cover?
Wait a minute. How do I even know you are you?
Right. Well, that discussion could go on for hours.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's all personal preference. I think when we talk
that
about
piece is 100% personal preference.
Right.
Knowing your kids, knowing your home, knowing who comes and goes from your home. You have too many scenarios for us to nail down one mindset.
Yes.
But
to answer the question, if there's security officers out there that don't know the answer to that, and I was one of them, I'm telling you, I worked for a company that gave me no training, that was like, sure, get armed, and then literally, and I didn't, because I'm telling you, it felt so unnatural. I was like, I can't keep a round chambered.
Isn't that weird though? That you and I, even though we ended up doing the same thing for a living, we had such different. Like your first experience with it was no, and my first experience was like, how dare you not have a round in the? I mean, just talk about the polar opposites there.
It's
wow,
different, and it took me, I want to say,
until you got to
I
Hutch.
worked for another company. No, I worked for another company that had a little bit more training, and I think I also had people to ask questions of at that point. The other one was kind of, I was on an island, and those exist. So I mean, that's what I was hopeful for with this video. Is if there's anybody out there kind of wondering the answer to that question, and two. Not that this is the end all be all. You may work for a company that has a different mentality or different, idea of that. Although I haven't heard of anybody that would say don't do that.
I haven't either.
I will say definitely check the regulations in the cities that you're working and ask those questions and figure out, because like here in Kansas City, we have that regulation to where you are not able to carry it unless you're actually on the post and kind of moving that stuff around.
I'll give a shout out to him because I had lunch with him yesterday, but Chief Kevin Self used to yell at us when we were clearing a malfunction or when we were doing a mag change. When he was my firearms instructor at the police department, he'd say, Leon, get that fucking thing running.
Right.
And when you're in an officer's scenario, you're in a security officer scenario, you're in a gunfight scenario, that round has got to be in that pipe because you got to get that thing running. You can't give that suspect, you can't give that assailant any more time.
And know that too, that if you draw that weapon while you're on duty,
it's hot.
And that's why trigger discipline and keeping your finger out of the trigger guard and all that other stuff is crucial, because yes, you're taking it to a different level of, hey, that thing is ready to roll when you pull it out of the holster. But
absolutely.
Hope that was helpful to anybody out there that did know the answer to that, or if anybody has any thoughts or opinions that may differ or experiences, love to hear it. But that's our 2 cents.
Thanks very much.
Talk to you next time.